Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. This is a super special treat. This is, you probably recognize her from Instagram, but this is Michelle Dempsey-Multack, and she is awesome with everything related to divorce, co-parenting, and she has a book, Mom's Moving On. She's just awesome. What is your handle on Instagram again?
I'm the Michelle Dempsey on Instagram.
Yes, yes, you're just the Michelle Dempsey.
Yeah.
And your content is so good. I've had clients bring it up in session
Oh,
that
I
they
love
follow
that.
you. And you are like the guru for, I guess, both parents, but really obviously moms that are divorced and trying to rebuild.
Yes.
And obviously, I am divorced as well and remarried. And I think we're similar because I think you are remarried for 6 years, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and
correct.
I'm 5 years, and so that's cool. And so obviously, this stemmed, I assume, from your experience as a child of divorce, right? And then with your own divorce. So just kind of tell me, how did you decide to build this whole business helping women?
Well, that's a good question. And yes, a large part of this was informed by my childhood experience, which was like a what not to do in divorce and co-parenting, and I was deeply affected by it. So when I got divorced, I was very intent on separate and apart from the career that this became, just doing it differently for her, like separating my issues with her dad from her experience with her dad, because the one thing I did want for her is a healthy relationship with her father, since I did not have that as a result of the divorce, my parents' divorce. So at the time, I was 33 with a 2 year old. I was freelancing for a lot of different online publications, writing articles about motherhood and
Just
all
like
those.
me, I had the same kind of experience, but continue.
Yeah. So one of the editors I was working with, I was like, look, like I can't write about date night. I'm now getting divorced. And she was like, well, that's an interesting angle. We don't get a lot of content about that. So I started just openly writing about my experiences as a single mom, how isolating it felt, how scary the whole process was. I started posting about it, and there was not a lot of that out there at the time. I want to say this is about 8.5 years ago. And then it kind of just like blew up. I kind of became the person that, people would say, oh, I saw your article in Parents, or I saw your article in Scary Mommy. And I felt like I was reading about myself. And so as my Instagram started to grow pretty rapidly, people would come to me with questions that I didn't necessarily know how to answer or want to answer without having more information. So I started my podcast in early 2020. At the time, it was Mom's Moving On. Um, and it was good timing because then COVID happened and everybody was just kind of home listening to podcasts. So we were able to start bringing on professionals who could actually speak to some of the questions I was getting asked. And then with that, people would ask me, do you have a book that I can read? And I didn't. So I decided, let's find an agent and get a book deal. So at the end of 2020, I was offered a deal with Simon and Schuster, and then in 2022, Mom's Moving On came out. But since then, the brand has sort of transformed itself to the Moving On method, because I do work with a lot of moms and dads. It was like years of dads like secretly DMing me, like, I know this is a mom account, but like I'm also dealing with co-parenting and I need a lot of help. So now I do work individually with moms, dads, or moms and dads, to help them navigate co-parenting. And I've also in that space, in that time, developed the Moving On Method training program, which is where I train
New coach.
prospective coaches and other divorce professionals on like best co-parenting practices.
You really, that's what I have a post that said, if you have like a bad childhood, you could turn that lemon into a lemonade of a fulfilling career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a career. I think the career kind of just happened because of the work I was already doing. Regardless of whether or not I made this a career, my intent was still the same. And that was just doing much better for her than my daughter than was done for
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Yeah, and what people resonate with your account so much is that you're real and you share that there are ups and downs. Recently, you shared that you were going through a difficult time with co-parenting, right? That was
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important to be real, because I think when I'm sharing certain information with people, they're like, yeah, well, that's great, but my situation will never be like that. And what I try to tell people is it can be, and then it may get really shitty again, but then it can also be really good again. Like it's going to ebb and flow, like a marriage, like a friendship, like any relationship where you are entwined in a way that is, bigger than you. You share a kid. You're gonna hit bumps in the road. And so I think I would never come out onto social media and be like, co-parenting is perfect. Because even for the most amicable co-parents, my ex and I reached some very amicable periods. You're still gonna disagree on stuff. You
Right.
still have to figure out how am I going to handle this disagreement in a way that won't affect my children, right? Like naturally you're not going to see eye to eye. You got divorced. So that's really what my messaging is that no matter
Yeah.
what is coming your way, even if you're the only amicable, reasonable one in the pair, it makes a difference for your kids.
Yeah, and that part that you just said, whereas like you're not going to agree on everything because you got divorced, I have to say that to people so much more than I thought that I would. Because people come in and this, I mean, I don't know what you do specifically, but when people come in and they tell me we're going to be the divorced people who have all holiday meals together and we still go out to dinner together, they have not even divorced yet. I'm like, maybe, but that would be very low odds. Because if you could do all that stuff, you probably still stay married. If you could
Yeah. And I
eat out
think
to get, all this stuff that a couple would do, but you're going to be divorced.
Right. And I think a lot of people do actually set out with that intention. There are people who really do come to a decision, there's no abuse, there's no personality disorders. It's just like, hey, this isn't working anymore. We've grown apart. Let's
Yeah.
be big, mature people about it. Okay, great. And then people will often come to me in that phase, and then we dig a little deeper. Sometimes the one pushing for the most amicable way of doing things is really trying to maybe protect their assets, right? I don't want to fight. We'll split everything. We'll do 50-50, but all of a sudden you find out like, there's hidden bank accounts in, some random country
Or they're cheating.
or when they're cheating and they don't want to have been caught, or they really do mean to be amicable. And then lawyers get in the mix and they're like, but why are you splitting this down the middle when you should be having more? And then the worst is when I see amicable co-parenting relationships go sideways because somebody has a new partner and that new partner is now causing drama or adding fuel to a fire that doesn't need any fuel and shit goes sideways.
Very much, especially when new children get into the mix, I've seen, because then they're fighting for a different kind of family unit with their new children in it, and
Hmm.
blending families is very difficult. So
Hmm.
people can usually do this and can do bird nesting. I don't know about you, I did bird nesting for like a year, the first
Hmm.
year after. And yeah, sure. And then, things move on and people have partners and people want another house and just
Hmm.
things change. You're not going to keep that up forever. And the point that I work with and you also seem to work with is being realistic, and not being Pollyannish. You got divorced. These things happen to lots of people, so they may happen to you. So maybe let's discuss them and think about what could come down the road so that you're not blindsided and then you react poorly.
Right, exactly. And I think also recognizing that quest or desire to be, best friends with your ex often usually comes from a place of fear or wanting to control. Like if we stay on good terms and I just say yes to everything, then there won't be any conflict and I won't have to be scared or feel fearful or worried. And that sometimes like happens to the detriment of the child or like what might be best for the child, right? So, people will reach out to me still. I wrote an article in like 2019 for Scary Mommy about how my ex and I took our daughter to Disney together. We
Mhm.
had been divorced about a year. I had just gotten in, well, we were apart for 2 years. I had just gotten engaged to my now husband. We could not agree on who would take our daughter to Disney first. Neither one of us wanted to give up that moment, as stupid as that was, because now when I think back, like she doesn't remember her first experience at
Yeah, for
Disney. But
sure.
okay, we were like, fine, then we'll just go together. We were in no way, shape, or form
Ready.
Yes, I was newly engaged. He's, still not the happiest with me, but yet we did it. And people are like, God, I wish I could do things like that. And I'm like, do you though? Because that brings being in a space with your ex just because you think it might look good to other people or to your kids isn't all that it's cracked up to be. When there's tension
Yeah.
and you know that no matter how kind you try to be, they're going to be throwing zingers and now you're going to be on your like toes the whole time. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So this level of amicability that people have in their minds is very different from what actually needs to occur behind the scenes.
And you're right, because that's because in those situations, people cannot decide who gets to go to Disney first or who's going to have the next Thanksgiving after the divorce or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. It's
Hmm.
really hard. The grief process of not being with the child all the time is
Hmm.
is really, really difficult. I mean, I've found
Yeah.
people
And the
people
only
vastly underestimate.
Right. And too many people, because they are so hurt when the divorce process starts, it's like they let their emotions for the marriage bleed into the parenting process. Like if I had $1 for every time a new client would say to me, I can't let him have any time sharing because I'm the one who's done all the work up until this point. Have you done all the work because this person physically can't do it, or because it was just easier for you to just take control and do it your way, So there's this false belief that just because somebody wasn't a good partner, they'll be a bad
Yeah.
parent, but that's not often the case. Sometimes it is. I'm not saying, every situation is different, but it's very hard for people to separate the marital angst or the
Yeah.
divorce pain from the parenting process.
Yeah, that's what I say about cheating because so many people say, "Oh, can I tell my child?" Because they deserve, that's always the one. They deserve to know what POS their dad is. I'm like, no, they deserve not to know.
Right.
Like how does
Exactly.
that help anything? They're not going to be a bad dad just because they cheated on you.
Right.
It's very different.
Right. And people who fall into that like all or nothing thinking pattern are very scary. Like you morally did something that I don't agree with, so all of you is bad. Like I always tell people, you got to live in the gray. Like there's probably plenty of things you've done in your life that you don't want your kids to know that you'd be mortified by. Are you going to sit your 7-year-old down and tell them about so and so sex life down the block? No, you are not. Why? Because it's information that is not appropriate for them. So when you are now telling them that dad stepped out of the marriage, what does that mean? Oh, they were in bed with somebody else. What does that mean? Why? Why? It's all an ego thing and it's a fear. And I get it. I get it. The fear there is I don't want them to blame me for the divorce or think I'm the bad one. But then you have to frame the divorce as something that isn't a bad thing, right? It's a sad thing, it's a change, but there was no good guy, bad guy. We're both on the same team here. Our team is you, and we're always going to be rooting for you. So I think if you really feel inclined that your, young child needs to know the truth, or even your teenager. I'm 42, almost 42 years old. I don't need to know about my mom's sex life now. I certainly didn't need to know about it as a teen, right? If
Yeah.
you feel that inclined to let them know, take a beat and try and find out the why behind your belief that they need to know, because it's likely rooted in how you don't want your child to perceive you or how they are perceiving you that you want to change their perception.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to be the victim. They want to be seen as the victim in the divorce, and that's the only familiar role to them. And so, in order to be the victim, they have to make the other one the perpetrator. And
And the second you do that, you're now, pointing the fingers. I always say there's no bad guy or like there's no bad guy, good guy. It's a battle between good and ego, right? Like you're both good in your own ways. You both did stuff that, okay, objectively, subjectively bad, I don't know, but like you're not, it doesn't define you as a whole. So to pull your child into that narrative is also saying, this person did this, but they love you, and you're going to spend weekends with them. Okay, they're bad, but they love me. Am I bad because you love me too? So it's so confusing for a child. And I mean, there's a reason why most parenting plans have a non-disparagement clause. And unfortunately, a lot of people can't follow that, but it is the most toxic thing you can do to your child.
yeah, and it leads to a lot of parental alienation, and then the child doesn't want to go to the parent,
It's
and the
not
other.
even alienation. I think what's worse than alienation, frankly, is parentification. I think raising a kid who is so now concerned about the adult feelings in the equation so much so that their own feelings don't get addressed, that's a very, very scary situation for me because alienation attempts can be made all the time, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to something. Parentification, on the other hand, is it happens at the drop of a hat, and once that line has been crossed, it's very hard to come back from.
And so then that's something that you happened to you, right, as a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, my dad cheated and left the marriage, and that was in the conversation as to why my parents were getting divorced. I didn't need to know, but also this was 32 years ago, so people didn't know what they didn't know. My mom was an immigrant to the country, single mom, very devastated. But then my dad also didn't do himself any favors. I mean, the weekends that I did spend with him over the 2 years before we became estranged, I was at Ella's house, Connie's house, this one's house. He had a different woman every weekend, and I had to keep them quiet from each other. I mean, it was
Ah,
horrible. On
yeah.
top of the fact he was trying to alienate me from my mother and my grandparents and all of that. So I have no business asking, I wonder why I'm a people pleaser. Or I'm scared to ever share my true feelings in certain situations, or I have struggle with self-worth, or why an eating disorder became my coping mechanism. It's because my childhood was taken away from me in a sense when my dad's secrets and behavior and feelings became center stage in our relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And of course that happens mostly with a girl and an were you an oldest?
I am the oldest, and my parents' divorce was very, very ugly and resulted in when I had a guardian and ended up terminating my time sharing with my dad, he fought for custody of my brother and got my brother, my younger brother. So we grew up in separate homes.
Wow, that's terrible.
It was an awful, awful experience. My parents' divorce started when I was 8 and finalized when I was graduating high school at 18.
That is crazy.
Hmm.
10 years
Hmm.
going back and forth, all those money, the legal bills,
Hmm.
all the drama.
The plus side is that my mom fell in love with her divorce attorney, who became my stepdad, very like Charlotte York Goldenblatt, Sex in the City.
Yes.
And he really became my dad. I mean, he was, I always say, like the guardian angel that was sent that kept me. I mean, I still had so many issues through my teen years and even now into now, but he really was the pillar for me to say, okay, you know what? There are good men. He did want to see me do well. He did love me unconditional and want to see me succeed. And I was very, very grateful to have him in my life.
That's a nice story. Did he have children when he met your mother?
Yeah, he had adult children,
Oh,
so they didn't live with us. He actually passed away right when I graduated college, which was
oh,
probably harder for me than my whole experience as a child of divorce, because that was just like an unexpected heartbreak that kind of just set me off the rails for a little bit, and I still struggle with it because it felt like my mom and I were finally given a chance at like goodness and kindness and love and normalcy after such brutal existence with my dad's fighting and but yeah, life happens. What are you going to do?
but you have so much experience to draw from when you help the clients. And when, I mean, my home life was pretty dysfunctional. My parents, I would beg to get divorced, but they didn't.
And that
So
has
that,
really serious implications too, which is why we say staying together for the kids is not the right thing, right? You know how many adults I meet, like your age, my age, who say, I wish my parents would have gotten divorced. It was toxic as hell.
yes, people from more quiet conflict homes, like, who are blindsided more, those people, they don't get that. They don't even believe me when I say things like some kids ask their parents to get divorced. Like they don't even believe that because they grew up with this kind of, the more waspy conflict where nobody talks.
Well, there are so many couples that I work with who mom and dad will hire me together to help them, like prepare them to have the conversation with their kids to let them know about the divorce. And they're freaking out that this is going to be the hardest conversation they ever have in their lives. And so many times they'll come back to me and their kids will be like, well, it's about time. And
Yep.
they're like, they're expecting their kids to be devastated and heartbroken. And research shows, and I have ample research on this, that divorce is often a relief for kids who have either grown up around tension or overt conflict and abuse. Like it's a breath of fresh air for them to have that part be done.
Yeah, it's a really crazy situation because, like, for example, me, like, my mother kept saying, like, oh, I would get divorced. I would get divorced. Like, except, then you wouldn't have money for dance lessons and stuff. So I'm like, okay, but I don't want dance lessons then, that's
Hmm.
fine. And then eventually, my father got laid off. They stayed together anyway. I got older and I was like, that was some codependent shit. That had nothing to do with that he had a job because when he didn't have a job, then it just stayed together anyway. And it was so much worse. And the
Yeah.
reality is, and I work with a lot of people and I say the same thing as you, not to stay together for the kids, especially if there's conflict. If there's
Hmm.
no conflict and both of you want to live a lie and you think that's better for the kids, make your own decisions as adults. But if there is active conflict, nobody, no child wants that burden of guilt. You stayed together so I could have dance lessons, right? I
Right.
mean, I saw through it after he lost his job, but had I not, then I would have been like, oh, maybe secretly I wanted dance lessons so bad that she had to stay in a bad marriage. It really is crazy making for a child.
It is, and it makes them feel way too responsible for something they have no responsibility over. And I think we forget that it's not just fighting that affects the kids, right? Like the model of marriage that they grow up with is what they will emulate. Like whether they want to or not, it's like psychological, like built-in patterns that they've grown up with, they've become accustomed to, and people seek out what's familiar. So if you're modeling a loveless marriage where people are just living two separate lives and coexisting, that might feel like a comfortable norm for your child, and then end up in a marriage where they are also unfulfilled and, just feeling
All
like
the
they have to give
sexless
themselves
marriages.
up.
Yep, all the sexless marriages I work with, that's a big thing. I say, did your parents touch? No. Did they hug and kiss? No. And it was just passed right down because you don't learn how to do that. It's the same as like using diminutives, like saying honey or dear. If you heard your parents do it, you're going to do it. If you heard
Hmm.
them kiss and hug, you're going to do it unless you
Hmm.
go to therapy or you go to coaching or you are the most introspective person in the whole world and you can, crowbar in some new ways of being.
Hmm. Yeah, it took me a long time to learn how to be in a healthy relationship. It was very foreign to me. I remember my therapist when I first started dating my now husband, like literally was like, we need to teach you how to receive. Like I was so like on guard, like independent. I don't need that. I don't need this. I'll take care of myself. And it was like, that's not normal, just because your mom was a strong single mom and led the way in that sense, like it's still okay to be able to receive and trust that the person who wants to show love or be generous or take care of you is doing it with like good intent, not, to manipulate. So that was another curveball for
Well,
me.
yeah, because especially your situation, like you're going to think a man is not trustworthy. The more charming he is, then the
Hmm.
less trustworthy he is.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really obviously it's great that you understand like the link between the upbringing and how you act. So many people, whether they're therapists, coaches, they say, well, almost that was then, this is now, and let's just focus on, the present. Can't really focus on the present without understanding why you're triggered by the things you're triggered with, which is always situated in how you were raised.
And self-awareness is a superpower, and it doesn't just stop at saying like, oh yeah, I'm anxious because of my parents' conflict when I was a kid. Okay, so what does that mean? How does that show up for you? How do you respond to conflict? How are you showing up in your relationships? How is knowing this about yourself affecting you and what you put out into the world? Like it doesn't, this notion of like, okay, I'm avoidant. Yes, I am very avoidant. And I also know how it's affected me in certain situations. So I have to have the self-awareness to know in any disagreement or my reaction to a problem, why I have that reaction and how it could affect things moving down the line. Like without self-awareness, you're not going to get very far in life.
Sure. And so then do you think that remarrying, well, like set you up to be like working with men more? Because now you could see, I guess your husband's trying to be a good step parent and good in his divorce, right? So I mean,
Hmm.
you see that there are men that are trying super, but I guess you had the stepfather too.
I did. And also, yeah, my husband is an incredible ex-husband and step parent and dad, and that was definitely a great model for me to draw on. But I think what led to more men hiring me, like I never like advertised myself to work with men, was more just that my content has always been very geared towards parents both parents supporting the dad's role. Like I think for a long time, because I was a divorce account, people thought I was bashing men. And then dads really started to realize that like I'm actually trying to help women see why putting their emotions aside and allowing children a relationship with the dad is a good thing when it's safe and appropriate, right? So I think because men stop seeing me as the enemy, that's why they were reaching out more and more to hire me. You know,
Yeah.
now I'll have like I have a client who's like, I went on a bad date, like I need help. I don't understand women. Like I'm Venmoing you, like give me a session, you know, but I think men also really enjoy a woman's perspective when they have the self-awareness to know that they don't know everything and that parenting on their own is hard for them too. So, yeah, but my husband is an incredible role model. His co-parenting relationship really was like what I wanted to emulate. And
Oh,
I still draw so much inspiration from because their daughter, my stepdaughter's now in college, and the way they handle everything is just so beautiful and amazing. Um, and he's also a family court judge, so that helps
oh
because
wow.
we get, you know, we hear it all and we hear the really bad, the really ugly, and it gives us both the motivation to want to do things right.
So you're gonna write another book at some point, do you think?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I think it'll be very different from my first in that my first was very, you know, I wrote it in 2020 and I got divorced in 20, I got separated in 2017. Still had a toddler. It was a very different experience. And I think what more and more people are looking for from me is, you know, my first book was Moms Moving On, but like, okay, what now? We've moved on, right? So what does the blending look like? How does that work? How does your past affect it? All those types of things. So we'll see.
So you always have something coming up. You're very busy. You're a very busy person. To get this, I had to wait months to get you on my calendar for this podcast. You're just a naturally high energy person.
No, actually, I'm not. I that's why you had to wait months because I like to give my all to things, and if I'm in the middle of something else, I've learned that like I can only, you know, burn the candle for so long at both ends before I fizzle out. And I really did try and take time for myself this summer to work on like the back end stuff and not see clients. Also, like, I mean, like you said, you saw on social media, I'm going through a difficult co-parenting season. And if I'm not at my best, I can't give my best to people. And I'm really clear on that too. You know, I don't want to be in it with them. I want to have a neutral perspective. And you know, when you're going through a hard time and then you're working with a client who's going through the exact same thing you are, but you're
Oh,
not going to
yeah, tell
disclose
me
to them.
about it, man.
Right. And so you know, it's important to me that when I do put myself out into the world, I do it in a way that's going to be helpful and beneficial and not, you know, I don't believe in having a victim mentality for myself. So,
Same. We have a lot of overlap. That's why the men like you, because you're a straight shooter. You're very direct. That's kind of feedback that
yeah,
I.
I mean, my
Where are you
clients know.
from?
My
Where are you
clients
from?
know I'm not always going to tell you what you want to hear, but I will always tell you what you need to hear. I'm from New York originally. I live in
Where?
Miami, Rockville Center, Long Island.
I'm from Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I knew I recognized that. You live in Miami now?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah, it's so cool. I didn't know because I hear the voice, so I assume it's going to be like New York, New Jersey. I love
I mean, I
Miami.
will always be a New Yorker, and I did live in Jersey for a little bit, but I've been down in Miami for about 13 years now.
Wow, wow. So your daughter's how old?
She's now 10 and a half. She's in fifth grade. My
Wow.
stepdaughter's a freshman in college.
So you got through
And
the teenage years with one child.
right, my husband keeps saying now we get to do it all over again. We know what to expect.
I think that different seasons of life are like very hard for co-parenting because I know like myself, an unexpected challenge was that as they get older, they want to spend less time at home. So
Hmm.
then you have your time. And I even saw you did a reel about this at some point that like you shouldn't like not let the kid go to a sleepover because like your time, but that's like so sad too. Like that,
It
like,
is. It
you know?
is. And my daughter made a comment to me a few years ago. I think it was my weekend per the plan. And her dad had texted me that he got tickets for something that I knew Bella would like really love. So I was like, baby, I know we had these plans today, which were like nothing. We were going to go to Target and like return something. I'm like, but daddy got tickets for Inter Miami. And, you know, she was like, but it's your day, so I don't have to go. And I was like, excuse me, what? You're not my library book. It's your life. You want to go to the Inter Miami game? You're going to the Inter Miami game. You don't have to worry about me. And so that really helped shift my perspective on like, this is her life, and no child should have to feel It's on the Children's Bill of Rights in divorce. Like children deserve to live a life as close to what it would have been had their parents not gotten divorced. And so I don't care if it's my weekend and she wants to sleep at a friend's house. Like, I'm not going to say, no, you can't sleep at a friend's house because you were with your dad last weekend. That forces them to carry the burden of divorce. I would never do that. The problem, though, is not sometimes you'll have a parent in the equation like me who's like, girl, don't
Yeah.
worry about me. Go enjoy your friends. That's such a formidable time in your life to have these experiences. But then you'll have the parent who says, make your plans on your mom's time. It's my weekend. And then that's that new stage you weren't prepared for, right? Like, holy shit, how do we navigate this, right? And then your kid doesn't want to go to the other parent's house because they're basically weaponizing them and using them as property, and you don't know what to do. So, yes, bigger the kids, the bigger the problems. That's why I do work with so many parents early on in the divorce process phase on their parenting plans because they don't know what's coming down the line. And somebody needs to help them see into the future. And that's what
Yeah,
I
and
do.
everybody says that they're going to be cool with switching the weekends until you're asked one too many times to switch the weekends. And then you start to, whoever starts to feel exploited, then they slap back. And
Mhm.
it just, you see it all the time. But it is such a tough season as the kids get older. And then it was so funny
There was
actually.
things we never considered, like
Yeah.
sleepaway camp. Never knew my
Yeah.
daughter was going to want to go. Didn't even think about it, right? Because she was 2, she was in diapers. That was all I could think about was her being a baby. Braces, the cell phone. Now, her dad and I don't agree on when she'd have a cell phone. So it's like all of these things that I teach parents that you do need to think about now, just
Yeah.
to have a little wiggle room so you don't end up in court fighting over like
The cell phone.
visiting day at sleepaway camp.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and then their own issues come in as they're teenagers. They start to assert themselves and
Mhm.
they want their own life and they want to make their own choices. I said to my son the other day, never occurred to him, he's 12. And I said, after you're 18, then you don't have custody, like you're just a person, and you go to where you want. It was shocking to him. He never thought about it, because this is so much part of his life. I guess he
Yeah.
thought he would like go on Tuesdays and Thursdays home on his college break over there. And like it just didn't really occur to him.
Hmm.
And they switch, like it's a whole transition to young adulthood, and the goal is to have a good relationship with them as
Yeah,
young
but
adults.
but the pressure definitely doesn't end there. I mean, look, even like I said, my brother grew up in both homes. He grew up solely with my dad, but still saw my mom for part of like every other weekend or whatever. So, we had this whole like come to Jesus talk a few years ago where he was like, you thought you had it rough, but like you're not stuck in between. Like I'm an adult male and I still have to explain to one parent or the other why I'm going where I'm going for Thanksgiving or why I'm choosing not to fly home for this holiday and instead come down to Miami and see you. Like it doesn't, I mean, the actual parenting plan part may end, but the pull between two families doesn't.
Yeah, and you're right. And I see grandparents, even divorced grandparents. I think it's going to get even worse in coming generations with how involved dads have been. That's all great. But now they're gonna, of course, it's going to be a new dynamic, that
Absolutely.
granddad versus grandmom, and you got to go
Hmm.
to these. Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard on the kids, it's hard on the co-parents, like the
My
whole.
sister-in-law, I just have to shout her out because she's amazing. So her parents, she married my brother, and her parents are also divorced, but she has a relationship with both her parents. And so holiday season, they are like there's two sides to my family now because of the divorce. There's two sides to her family because of the divorce. Now they have kids and there's like a million different grandparents. Like she makes it a point, like she'll fly to New York, see my dad and his family. She's down here seeing me and my family. Like she makes it a point to cover all bases and I give her so much credit because it really is so hard.
That's cool, and I guess she understands, obviously, 'cause she's a child of divorce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like children of divorce, they find each other more,
Yeah, for sure.
as friends and everything. I mean, this was so awesome having you on the show. I know you do have to run because your time is limited, but this was super cool. And you are a great person and such a good role model for
Thank
divorced
you.
women. I mean, really, if people are talking to their therapist about you, then you're doing something right because people like almost never mention anybody else on social media except they'll tell me when they see my stuff. But then some people have really said, oh, yeah, I follow, Michelle Dempsey because she does this co-parenting stuff. So I'm going to link to your book. I'm going to link to all your stuff, and everybody should
Thank you.
follow you on Instagram and everywhere, and your podcast. And just thank you so much for being on my show.
Of course. Thank you for the time.